Can I draw this mountain landscape of the Tetons in 10 hours? We are going to find out. And I'm going to give you drawing tips along the way. Hey everybody, we're going to jump right into this challenge, but before that, I'd love if you'd support my work and hit the subscribe button and hit the like button. Now let's jump right into this. So the first thing I'm doing here is just mapping out the mountain range, and then I'm going to start with the clouds. My approach here is just to start from the top and work my way down. Now you might ask why I'm challenging myself to do this in 10 hours, and the reason is I have the problem of getting so deep into the details that even like a simple drawing can end up taking me weeks, months, hundreds of hours, and I'm trying to force myself to get out of that so I can do more quick sketches here and there and just sort of, work on my own skill sets and also figure out ways that maybe I could approach things better. Now on this cloud section, I'm using the eraser relief technique that I demonstrate in my cloud drawing tutorial. I'll link to it down in the description if you want a more in-depth explanation. Now I love working on clouds and developing all these rich textures and details, but I can already tell I'm spending way too much time on this section. So if I have time at the end, I'll come back and work these more, but let's move on to the mountain range. Now this photo is taken from Grand Teton National Park, at a really popular photography spot called Schwabacher Landing. Now my approach to drawing mountains is you first want to draw the main ridge lines and then sort of build off it from there. And this is going to give you the direction and slope of each of the mountain faces. Now this photo was taken pretty early in the morning, so the sun is rising out of the east, which is from the right here. So all the shadows are really getting cast to the left. Now after you get those main ridge lines in, a lot of times where those have any sort of hard angle, some other ridge lines are coming off that, oftentimes going in another direction. So that's normally where I go to next to work the different slopes of these different sides of the mountain and rock walls. Now on mountains, if you have any large flat plateau areas, put a little extra effort in to make those work and come together, because that can really be an easy way to show the 3D aspect in your drawing and the different slopes of the mountain. Now on this little hilly section, obviously I can't get all the detail that I want, but one way that I can show some detail and also the contour of this hill and the direction is I'm putting all these little shadows from these tiny trees pointing to the left, because again, the sun is coming from the right. And that just allows me to give a little more realism even on the small scale and also show the direction and slope of this hill. Now I'm really happy with how these mountains have come together here. But that being said, I've gotten a little too much into the details and I've really used up a large chunk of my 10 hours. So I'm gonna have to pick up the pace on the rest of this drawing here. Okay, so let's get going on this tree section and the grass section. Now at this point, I'm really just drawing here as fast as I can. Now, if you want to see how I would normally do this section, be sure to check out my How to Draw a Forest tutorial. And that'll show you how to get an incredible amount of detail and texture within small areas that have a lot of highlights and blacks and midtones in it like this. But since I'm working so fast here and only have a few hours remaining, my main goal is just to sort of mimic the texture as best I can. Now, one way I'm trying to mimic the texture here is just putting my pencil on the paper and making as small a mark as possible and kind of as random as possible, keeping the highlights and midtones on the right and the shadows on the left, because again, the sun is coming from the right. Now, in all honesty, I'm not super happy with these trees, but for how fast I've completed that section, and I think from a distance, they work relatively well. Now again, this grass I'm not super thrilled with, but at this point I'm drawing almost as fast as I possibly can to see if I can hit this 10 hours here. It's looking like it's going to be pretty tight. Now again, ideally, if I was going to spend an unlimited amount of time on this, I would use the same texture building technique as I do in that How to Draw a Forest tutorial. Okay, so clearly I'm not going to finish this in 10 hours. So I'm gonna give myself 2 more hours and let's see if I can finish this in 12 hours. We're kind of approaching the home stretch here, where I just need to work on this reflection in the water. Now I'm just doing my best as fast as I possibly can to draw the clouds and mountain range flipped and reflected. So quickly approaching my 12-hour mark here. As you can see, I'm not going to make that either. You know, when you like to get into those details, it's hard to pull yourself out. Let's add one more hour to it. Why not? Okay, so just short of 12.5 hours, I've wrapped this drawing up. And I gotta say, overall, I'm really happy with how it turned out, especially with how fast I was drawing. I would say the last 60%, it was pretty much just as fast as I could make marks on the paper without really thinking too hard about anything. You know, the grass section in particular, pretty bad. My mom would probably say she's proud of it, but I don't know if anybody else would. One thing I will say, while in photographs, I think having the reflection in there is really cool, especially when you see it in color. I think when it comes to a drawing composition, I actually prefer if it would end with this tree line here. I just think keeping everything monochromatic with pencil, it starts to get a little messy, and you know, maybe with more detail that reflection would come through a little better. But at least looking at this drawing, I might prefer it just below that tree line. Now I think overall, if I were to give myself a grade on this, I would probably go for like a C. Obviously that grass needs some major improvement. Of course, if you are a really strict teacher, I guess my grade would be an F because I turned in my paper 2.5 hours late. If you like this time lapse and want to see more, be sure to comment below. And again, I'd love if you'd support my work and subscribe and like. All right, thanks for watching, everyone.